Hello, and welcome to Strategy for Breakfast, where we are hungry to know what makes people and organizations successful. Today, we're talking about accessibility. This is a really interesting topic, and I'm really looking forward to diving into this. How can organizations ensure every consumer has what they need, no matter who they are? Our guest this week knows how to shape the way companies win in digital, understanding consumer expectations from folks who use assisted technology. I'm Rebecca Solomon, your host from GDS Group, and today we have Jack Cunningham joining us. Jack is the Director of Product Management at Livefront. And Jack, you are focused on prioritizing how accessibility drives growth. Now, we first met you as a panelist at one of our GDS Group summits. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Yeah, I'm happy to be back.
Yeah, appreciate it and looking forward to diving into this topic. Tell us a little bit about how you became interested in accessibility and why it's so important.
Yeah, my interest in accessibility, I think, stemmed rather from my first job right outside of college. I had joined a rotation program at a SaaS provider that sold software into hotels primarily to give kind of those front desk agents what they needed to connect with guests and serve their needs. And in that, I spent several months in kind of different areas of the organization, but much of it spent in customer success. And our goal was to figure out who are the power users of our software, what makes them tick, and why are they so good? And so we could then eventually go spend time with them and help kind of grow those patterns and use cases across the rest of the organization to really bolster up the user base. And in that process, looking at some data, we found some just very interesting individuals, and the way they used the product was so unique and different, but their satisfaction scores were through the roof. There was just like something very unique about this small group of folks. And I got the opportunity to meet one of them, and I show up and I'm really surprised and find out this front desk agent's completely blind.
Wow.
And I got to spend the day watching how she navigates her job, and she was so successful, and all the guests loved her, and her satisfaction scores were the highest of everyone on the platform. And so it was really a breathtaking experience to watch and kind of be surprised in this experience, but watch all of the hurdles that she had to jump through in her entire day with every piece of software, not just ours, not actually serving her needs. And she had all these different workarounds for making it happen. And I think my big takeaway was just imagine what we could enable her to achieve if we built the product purposely for her to support her expectations and needs. And it really just boiled down to me finding this kind of love and interest in enabling people who have these adaptive needs to be their best and realize their full potential. So I went on a long journey to learn quite a bit and still learning a lot in the space, but really eye-opening experience that stuck with me.
Well, kudos to you because as I mentioned earlier, everyone deserves a fair shot at success
Yeah.
and to be able to thrive. And I feel like oftentimes we forget that and we forget that some people don't have it as easy as others. And so I guess that would lead me to my next question. Where and why are companies failing to see the need for accessibility? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think I'm less convinced that people don't see it as a problem. Instead, I think it's more of how they're battling incentive structures. If you think about trying to bring a new product into the world, you are incentivized to do it as quick as possible and iterate really, really quickly. The name of the game is trying to prove, is there some value here, and do it right away. And so oftentimes you're trying to get the smallest increment of product out into the world. And so it's incentivizing you to just move really quickly and break things. And frankly, building an accessible product, the right way to do it is doing that from the start. And so understanding that's really kind of a nuanced process to evaluate, is my product accessible? That's seen as a slowing factor for when, this supports our broadest use case. Let's kind of get it out there and we'll come back and address accessibility later on. It opens up this kind of unfortunate need to justify financially with like an ROI assessment why we should go back and rebuild something. And so that's what I mean by these incentive structures maybe aren't set in a way to allow you to go back and do that work really effectively. And I think it means that we need to be finding ways to ensure that we aren't actually getting to that line where we have to justify the financial benefit of each individual feature or tweak that we're making to a product to make it accessible. It comes down to building a delivery culture within everything you do that's aware of what's going on accessibility wise in your product, and ensuring you're making strong foundational decisions. So yeah, in my view, it's less so that people don't see the need and opportunity and care. It's more, how do I navigate the incentive structures of delivering products really effectively?
Yeah, and when you talk about budget and finances, that is a big thing. It's
Yeah,
not as much as maybe someone wants to make sure that there are the accessibility needs and resources available. You can't just like snap your fingers and get it.
of
It's a
course.
challenge, but there is that need. I mean, this is an interesting statistic. We know, according to the World Health Organization, about 15% of the world population live with a disability, right? So, talk us through that need and importance of making sure everyone, regardless of physical, sensory, cognitive impairments, can fully participate in the digital world.
Yeah, I mean, let's take a step back. It's early in the morning today. You and I are kind of getting our days started. The number of digital touch points you and I have already had to accomplish tasks
Yeah.
or just like connect, it's probably hard to count. And it's again so early in the day. I think being denied access to things implicitly harms businesses and humans alike. And that denial of access comes implicitly many times through, honest ignorance.
Mhm.
Knowing what the definition of accessibility really is, what that looks, what that feels like, how you support it, is unfortunately like quite ill defined for a lot of the products we build. A lot of folks rely on things like the web content accessibility guidelines as kind of the guardrails for a lot of our products. But let's say I'm building something for a streaming TV app on Apple TV or on Roku. Those, I guess, guidelines and stipulations oftentimes aren't directly mapped one to one to what's available on a platform that you're building for or how you're delivering your product. So it's very difficult to think about what accessibility actually looks like and feels like. And so I think, in this, we understand we're super reliant on technology. We're not going to see a contraction in technology anytime soon. It's understanding that the value that we are giving to businesses and people alike is technology enabled. And so, should we be ensuring that we are building products for the widest possible audience? My easy answer is yes, because there's so much more of human connection, human value creation is going to continue to come through technology. And so, understanding, we've got some little nuggets of definition so far, but we need to be building active interest and exploration into these for all the different modalities and forms of technology that come next. And I guess your point to the size of the market, right?
Yeah,
If you extrapolate that out and just think of commerce itself, 15% of the world is unable to or is not necessarily well supported
right.
in trying to transact. Like that's crazy. But in the same sense, looking at it just from a transaction standpoint is kind of reductive because again, it's enabling humans to be their best. It's the same
Mhm.
reason we love to watch the Olympics. It's people who are performing at the best of their abilities. It's just a wonder to watch. So I think the argument that I would make as to like why it matters is just think about the potential upside in showing what humans can accomplish if we are actually supporting the widest audience possible.
Do you find that, when I think of the Olympics, as you mentioned, that's a good analogy there. You have a lot of these athletes or retired athletes who are now involved in the process moving forward. Do you find that a lot of people who would benefit from the accessibility resources, are they also kind of in the journey to make the world more accessible?
Yeah, I think I've been pleasantly surprised by the forward progress and like the amount of interest. But if you think about like the progress has not been linear in the
Okay.
space, and we shouldn't expect it to be moving forward. We're in a spot right now where I think there is actually a great deal of risk that we're going to take some leaps backward. We take a look at the administration that's just come into power right now in the U.S. They're actively encouraging a divestment in DEI and accessibility, and large corporations are taking a look and saying, okay, I'm going to do so because I'm maybe not going to have my feet held to the fire. The foundational way that people have been sort of encouraged to care about this has been through a couple ways. One, those personal experiences, similar to mine, where you see the power. I would say that's less, unfortunately, the case that gets people to pay attention. The others have been these fear tactics. You have the Americans with Disability Act that was enacted in the 90s, and that's what lawsuits have been brought about to enforce organizations to care in some way. So you've got this sort of risk mitigation that's actually gotten people to care. And then the other side is making the business case time and time again. Oh, we're going to broaden our market, but that doesn't stick with sort of the pendulum swings that we see in the market. And the administration change is a good example of that. You've got organizations like Target who say I'm going to take a step back, and it's because they have been taking these approaches that are I'm going to justify our step in this direction for this individual business case. And I think it's just the wrong way to approach it. It comes down to building that culture that's enforcing it, so you're not having to make that justification over and over again.
Well, and that's a good segue to, talk about leadership a little bit. What actions can leaders take today to make this meaningful progress in the area of accessibility?
Yeah, I think when I talk about it, it's repeated action, right? And it's that culture thing I keep harping on rather. And I think there's four, I don't know, repeated step functions that I always see as ways to succeed. It's modeling what accessibility looks like and doing so in a way where you're like, hey, here's a really wonderful experience built in a product. Here's how it supports both people who rely on assistive technology and not, just to broaden kind of the understanding of what's possible and really define what accessibility looks like. So in that modeling action, it oftentimes comes about in applying some kind of creative constraints on top of product design early on. Then there's teaching awareness. I mentioned, it's really ill-defined to understand what is accessible. So focusing on teaching that awareness. I think the big one that I see as really enabling for a lot of organizations is that perspective taking. How do we find more opportunities to get leaders to have that experience that I had early on? And there's great ways to do so. You can recruit individuals to go test out your product and prototypes remotely who rely on assistive technology. These are practices that product leaders have already been doing to validate, does this concept resonate with the market? Why can't we be doing that same usability research with an accessibility lens on top of it to help build that perspective? And then I think the fourth thing is building those reinforcement or kind of momentum reward mechanisms into your process so that it doesn't ever boil down to that conversation of like, hey Jack, why should we support a screen reader with this function?
Right. Yeah, it's also fascinating. You brought so many interesting things to our podcast here, but we can't talk about accessibility without bringing in AI,
Mhm.
right? I mean, AI is literally the tool of all tools that we're seeing right now, and it's just bursting in every single industry. And when it comes to accessibility, they're really intersecting in some fascinating ways, with AI playing a big role in improving the accessibility of technology and helping people with people with disabilities navigate the world. Now, of course, it also comes with challenges, as we see that, with AI everywhere. But what are your thoughts here on kind of the collaboration between accessibility and AI?
Yeah, I think if you look on the positive column of that ledger, I think I'm really loving that Gen AI is making it really accessible for people to ask pragmatic questions and learn more about accessibility. I think the rise of AI agents is really unique in expanding access to individuals. You can imagine there's kind of this buzz around how are we creating multimodal experiences, which really means how do I interact with a system or a function in different ways and modalities. And that's really amazing when you think about AI agents for people who don't have the same cognitive or physical ways of interacting with hardware to engage with your software. I can now use my voice to ask things like OpenAI's operator to go perform an action on a website, and that website's maybe horribly inaccessible, and I can still reach that end. So some really, I think, awesome opportunities for evangelizing what accessibility is and means, providing definition and gaining new access for different individuals. I think the concerns that I have
Mhm.
are that I want to ensure that we're not placing all of our eggs in that agent basket. We know that the progress of software and hardware and technology in general is going to continue, and the forms in which we interact with software and hardware are going to change and look and feel different in the future. And so putting all of our eggs in the basket of AI agents will help us handle some of or all of the accessibility issues is just it's going to be incomplete. I think a great example is you look at the EU's AI Act that they're
Yes.
rolling out, right? And if you take a look through that, it talks a lot about how can AI play a role in technology in the healthcare space, and it requires there's always a human in the loop. So we just know that there are going to be experiences in which we have to support humans in that actual interaction point, and we can't fully offload our knowledge. I just want to make sure we're not atrophying in our interest and our knowledge in the space. And I think there's a slight risk in the promise that things like AI agents bring, and people kind of falsely attributing it to hey, I don't need to think about accessibility anymore.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, it comes down to the human, especially with accessibility. So we can't
Yeah.
lose that at all with this. Are you confident in the future of accessibility?
I'm really confident in the need. Like it's just so clear to me. Again, it's that human element. I think going back to kind of mapping out the progress, I'm just concerned that we aren't encouraging leaders to think really strategically about how you stabilize the focus of accessibility in organizations. And I truly believe it's building product cultures and figuring out how you deliver to insulate yourself from different market pendulum swings that may cause you to think about, is it needed? Is it necessary? So I'm very confident the need will always be there. I'm hopeful that leaders will take notice that the ways we've tried to address accessibility in the past, to build cultures around it, haven't always been too successful, and that we'll continue finding new ways to promote it within organizations.
Well, definitely at the end of the day, it is up to the leaders, and it's up to just knowledge and informing, companies and people what it's all about. And I think, you definitely opened our eyes a little bit more to accessibility and the need for that through your experiences and what you're seeing. So, Jack, thank you so much. We really hope that you enjoyed being a part of this podcast. We certainly hope that everyone at home enjoyed listening to this episode of Strategy for Breakfast. Don't forget to follow, like, and share. Of course, there's so much more to talk about when it comes to accessibility and all of our themes. So if you'd like to join us at an event, you can see our schedule of upcoming events at gdsgroup.com. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.